Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 1st of November. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Off yesterday, but interesting catching up with Philippe Clement's press conference, as I'm sure we're going to get into, and looking forward to the game tonight. So lots to talk about, as always.
Absolutely. Were you out trick-or-treating last night?
I wasn't. No, were you? Or did you have trick-or-treaters at the door?
No, I didn't know. We live down a sort of a private sort of lane where there's not many.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, well, made it more. So it's not very kid heavy in terms of the trick or treaters. But I was out walking the dog last night, and there was a fair few out knocking on the door. So there you go. I think our trick and treating days are well behind us, Joshua. But a good old night of fun for all those that were taking part in it. Right, before we talk all things Rangers, just a quick word. As ever, for our podcast sponsors, the MPH Group, and incidentally, they've got they are the number one. If you're a family-run home improvement business in Scotland, they cover all of mainland Scotland. If you're looking for any home improvements, and these are the go-to guys. And remember, every service you opt for automatically enters you into MPH's incredible holiday giveaway. You could win a 7-night stay at the luxurious 5-star Moon Palace Resort in Cancun over in Mexico, which is a cracking prize. So if you want any home improvements or anything like that, the all-important links are in the description below. And we also have another group on board, Navian, and they've got a winter deal on where you can get a free Hive thermostat, free first-year service, up to 12-year warranty, a magnetic filter included, in flexible finance options. That is a boiler deal that is running at this moment in time. Finance from £5 per week. So thank you very much to our podcast sponsors. Right, let's talk Rangers. The Philippe Clement press conference is certainly creating a bit of debate from yesterday, Joshua, where he discussed the Rangers squad, fitness, injuries, and general lifestyle, really. Some interesting points to take away from it. He's talked about the injury situation being like a puzzle that he's not really witnessed in his career before. I think that was really telling. Chris's question to him yesterday, saying, were you surprised about the fitness and conditioning of the players when you arrived? And he said, next question, please. I thought was really telling as well. There's a point he's mentioned is that there's a cryo chamber at the Rangers training centre, and he's looking to get the players to learn how to use that as well. We've seen it used, of course, when England were using the Rangers training centre ahead of that game with Scotland, and we've seen the players coming out of that and using it. Quite telling, some of the words or some of what he didn't say yesterday, Joshua, with regards to the team's fitness. Certainly quite concerning, but at the same time, I think I'm quite happy that Rangers have got a manager at the helm who takes a great amount of interest in the medical side of things, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of why there have been so many players out injured in recent seasons.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this, Derek. I think first and foremost, you have, this is maybe not to this degree, because clubs maybe have I don't know, more infrastructure behind the scenes. Or whether it be down to a sporting director or someone to tie all the departments together. We've obviously spoken about that quite repeatedly, but there was not to the same degree. But I remember when Michael Beale came in last season, he spoke about the change in manager and how that can impact players' fitness, because you'll remember this time last year, the injury situation was maybe even arguably a little bit worse than it was at the moment. I even remember the season before where people were saying after Giovanni Van Bronckhorst had come in that the team looked fitter when they were going, obviously in that week, especially the Old Firm semi-final at Hampden, and they beat Braga in over 120 minutes as well. So I don't think this is an entirely new thing. On one hand, you also have, I've been doing listen to a great podcast, Tifo podcast this week, which is about this very topic with someone who's a sports science professional, and they were effectively explaining how much different managers now, with sports science so advanced, and with player welfare at the forefront of our minds, and also with games so frequently, The point effectively being, look, the way that different managers work can impact things so significantly, because some managers, they want their teams to defend in a low block. Some want to high press for the entire 90. Some want their team to be able to win with a transition late in a game. Some want their team to run their socks off for the first 60 minutes and win it within that. So I'll share that on my Twitter page, but it was an interesting listen to give a bit of context as to why so much change between different managers. And let's not forget, there's been 4 different Rangers managers in the last space of 2 years. How that can lead to this type of environment where players are working to different types of demands. The training schedule's different, the intensity of training is different, the intensity of their position is different. But then there is the other hand where this is not a point that Clement has made quietly. I think of all the points he's made so far, of everything that's frustrated him so far, this is the thing that he's spoken most repeatedly about. And you're right, the comment about the chamber, Cairo, I always want to call it a crypto chamber, but it's not a crypto chamber. Yeah. I think that's quite revealing. And he's that would be a different conversation, wouldn't it? It's a different and I think what stands out to me, Derek, is I don't think Clement's come into this job and he's thought, this is how I win the fans on board with what I say, or this is the messages I need to communicate. I think actually at the weekend when he spoke about the potential of having an amazing season, that was one of the first time where he's raised the expectations. So far, it's been about tempering expectations. It's been about dealing with what he has. And instead of saying, this is a football you're going to see, he's been saying, actually, I'm going to load the players slowly so I don't kill them at the start. So it is revealing, I think, that he's made such a big more noise compared to anything about this topic, and now I guess we need to see how what the fruits of that are. To go back to the conversation about training, if you remember one of his first press conferences, he spoke about he wanted to change the model of training so effectively the strongest players were getting stronger while the weaker players were getting stronger at the same time, instead of having more of a one-fits-all model. Now, you or I are not sports science experts, as far as I know. You might have a secret degree. But from those couple of podcasts I've been listening to and trying to learn a little bit about it, I do think different managers' methodologies to training, to their play style, to the way that they treat players' recovery can all have such a tangible impact on things like injuries. So it's really interesting, it's really revealing. And I guess the question now is how much can he fix it? But ultimately, I think the only thing that fixes it, Derek, is consistency with a manager over a period of time, because it takes players time to adapt to different training schedules. And if change is so consistent as it has been over the last number of years, I don't think you see this situation improve over the long term.
Yeah, I'll just expand on what he did say yesterday, folks, just to give you a bit more detail. He was talking he says that I feel like a doctor, not a coach. He said about those that are on the treatment table at this moment in time. He was asked about Danilo consulting a mental coach that he said after the game on Sunday to help him recover from a serious facial injury, of course, that he suffered at St Johnstone. He said, that is good. I like players who are ambitious and who look at these small margins to become better. For example, we have a cryo chamber here that was not heavily used before. We talked about that. It helps players who have inflammations. They disappear faster, so they have less risk of injury. It helps in recovery. I used it myself when I was a player, and I know the effect. It was very clear that it helps. After I said it once, everybody is going now after every game. Those are the things we need to improve as a group altogether. We need to educate the players what it is to be a top professional. So there you go. Also, he expanded on that as well. He said we started with a lot of players not available and have had some players falling out in the last couple of weeks. That's the difficulty for the moment. It's quite a puzzle, the biggest puzzle that I ever saw, to be honest, with all the injuries and players dropping out. So it will be really important every game to look at the minutes of every player and to try to build their physical condition, their robustness in the next couple of weeks and months to have a bigger squad available. Everyone in the club knows it's a really important part of the future for Rangers. And then he finished off with saying that, but this is work that's never short-term. That's impossible. No, this is a long-term project, creating physical ability and players ready for 90 minutes every 3 days for months. It's not something you can do in 2 weeks training. No one can. Same with robustness and making them stronger in general. So it's like you say, Josh, it's going to take some time, I think, before we have a squad that is prepared to fight on 4 fronts at this moment in time. He's sort of firefighting at this moment and hopefully just getting through game by game, as he touched on. And tonight is going to be a difficult test, you've got to say. Dundee in a decent run of form at Dens Park. They're going to be tricky opponents. We'll move on to a sort of a predicted lineups. Do you foresee many changes? Of course, no Nico Raskin or John Suter available for the trip north. Tom Lawrence also is back training, but the game comes too soon for him. So he's pretty limited, the manager, in who he can pick.
Yeah, just to finish on the injury conversation, I think another important point is, and you see it with 5 substitutions now, kind of across the board. Take someone like Cantwell, who's been taken off the 75-minute mark at the weekend, and the 60-minute mark in Prague. That's a half of football that he's not played, that he would have otherwise have played. And although it's tempting to just think, okay, leave the player on, they're fit enough to start the game, so they should be fit enough to see it out. When there is so many games, especially at the moment, when there's so many games in quick succession, what is the point in running someone like him into the ground as he's just coming back for his recovery? Because you're going to feel the effects of that a couple of weeks down the line. I think it's similar with Danilo. We can see the tangible difference when he's playing up front for Rangers at the moment. I listened to you guys yesterday. I thought he was, for the type of player he is, and I don't think he's necessarily a link-up striker who excels outside the box, so I thought he gave you a different option. But I thought the impact was actually pretty noticeable. He just gives you so much more in the box, I think. There's no point in starting him for those 2 games if that means that he slows his recovery, and then you're back to stage 0 again, and you have to start building up minutes. So I think that's the correct response. And I think you see managers do that all over world football at the moment, especially with that 5 substitution rule. You need to when there's so many games in quick succession. So I think that's an encouraging sign. To take it forward to the game tonight, Raskin's a big miss. Be interesting to see how Dundee approach it. Rangers might have a little bit more space away from home. I'm going to put up I think this is your predicted team, Derek, so correct me if I'm wrong.
It is.
The only change, I think I agree with you. Listen, I think that Lammers and Dessers, we've spoken about them repeatedly and spoke about them yesterday, so we won't go over old ground. But I think they're both in a position now where they came for a lot of money, and this is not an ideal situation to be in. But I don't know if Clement will drop them at the team tonight. I think they both look like players who could do with a spell out of the team. I think they look like players who could do with maybe playing periods in a game where there's a little bit less pressure, and they're able to build their confidence up as opposed to them being at the forefront of the team. So I agree that I think there should be changes with that in mind tonight. Obviously, Raskin being out is a blow. The fact that Clement didn't come out yesterday and say it's a long-term injury is somewhat hopeful, because I was expecting the worst with him having been stretchered off. And Suter being out as well limits your options at centre-back, although I think you probably keep that the same after the weekend. Guess there's some question marks about how much Dundee try and target the left-hand side. We'd hope that Rangers would have enough in possession to negate that. The only thing I'd maybe change to you is, depending on where Danilo is, I think he's a good option to have if you need to change the game. Whereas if you have to bring him off after 60 minutes, if you're chasing a goal, is that a less favourable position to be in? I don't mind the idea of maybe starting Sima through the middle. I know Scott Wright and McCausland less so because he's just come into the fold, but probably isn't a first choice in that position. I think he's made a decent enough impact from the bench when he's come on as of late. And again, I think if you're Clement going into this game tonight, you probably want at least one player on the bench who you're confident can come in and change the game. If Danilo can do 60 to 70 minutes, he starts for me. If not, I'd play Sima through the middle. You want him as close to goal as possible. And at the weekends, playing against the back 5, playing in a game where Rangers had to kind of break down a low block, and Hearts had that ideal advantage for their approach because they can defend the goal from the early minutes. It means that Sima's kind of on the periphery of a game as opposed to running in behind, getting in the box, becoming a second striker. I think McCausland probably deserves a start. And Clement said at the weekend he doesn't care what age a player is as long as they're good enough. And Cantwell, I think you saw at the weekend the good and the bad of he wants to move into the middle and get the ball. I think in the second half that left Rangers without a bit of width. I think you just need to, especially at this moment in time with such limited options, you need to get your best players in the most comfortable positions. So I'd be more than tempted to start him at central attacking midfield tonight. And with that, Derek, I'll pass the floor to you, but you've not really got an abundance of options, although Cifuentes and Dowell were on the bench at the weekend, which maybe gives you a little bit more room to play with in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, I think I think Lundstrom's a starter. I think that position next to him is up for grabs. It's either Jack Fuentes or Dowell. I think you're just going to go for Ryan Jack in there. And I'd like to see McCausland start. Would be his first start for Rangers tonight. I think he impressed at the weekend. I've been impressed with him every time I've watched him in the Rangers jersey. He just adds a bit of energy, and I think he would be starting for me tonight. Danilo, like you say, I'm with you, Joshua. If he's fit enough to start the game, give him 60, 70 minutes. I think it's all about progression. I liked what he said at the weekend, Danilo, about adrenaline getting him through games at this moment in time. I think it will do that. I mean, there will be one eye on Sunday, which is a huge game, but I'd start in both games if he's fit enough to do so. Hopefully the game is done by then. I think let's hope that is the case, and we're not facing a similar scenario that we witnessed on Sunday. Not good for the old ticker, I would say. I think that's going to be roughly the team. I think the back four picks itself, especially since John Suter is unavailable. There are concerns, I know, about that left back area. Ridvan was targeted at the weekend. I imagine he will be targeted tonight, but it's all about cover for him, and hopefully he can contend with anything that Dundee throw at him. So I think the team will be pretty much there or thereabouts tonight. As I mentioned, the manager is pretty limited in options he can choose from the bench. I think when we mentioned Dowell and things, I think they fall into the Danilo bracket where they are just coming back from injuries. You can't just throw them in. I'd imagine they'll be brought in gradually into the team, so we may see them from the bench at some point this evening. Let's get to loads of comments coming in, incidentally, just on the cryo chamber. We'll a bit of comedy on the morning briefing. Kevin Robb says Walt Disney is stored in one, so there you go, a bit of factual history for you there. Jeeb, good friend of the show, morning Jeeb, says Philippe Clement scares me. Yeah, he is a sort of overpowering, dominant figure. I think that's what Rangers have required, really, in charge of the football club, and hopefully he's sorting out things behind the scenes. The point where Clement was saying teaching players professional to be professional has created a bit of a debate in the comments here as well. It's not really what you want to hear necessarily, but I think we're quite confident that Clement will get this team into shape. Whether it's short-term remains to be seen, but certainly long-term, I've been impressed so far that they can get the squad organised and fit. And just on the back of that as well, Mark Lawson says with one eye on January, says, guys, you think he will have a dabble in your January transfer window? I think he will be backed in January, Joshua. I'm not entirely sure how much money is available. I imagine some movement, not only with players coming in, but outgoings as well. I think that would have been one of his stipulations when he was being interviewed for the job. And I'd imagine he would have been asking about funds and what is available for him to shape the squad in his image. I imagine there'll be a bit of activity in January.
Yeah, I don't. He said this a few times. I don't think he's a manager who I think will be different from the manager he succeeded. I don't think Clement will. He'll be used to working with a sporting director. He'll be used to working with a club when it comes to recruitment, and comfortable working with, I guess, maybe a wider range of players. But there's no doubt that if you look at the squad at the moment, if Lammers and Dessers aren't able to really not even turn around, but I think start making more of a tangible contribution, whether that be goals or assists, whether it be, well, I guess primarily that at the top end of the pitch. That's a lot of money when you're looking at the context of the season to be spent on players who have not done that so far. And then when you look at a team like tonight, even when you've got players like Matondo back in the final third, when you've got players like Lawrence back in the final third, that may be right-sided position, unless it's going to be Cantwell and Lammers playing as almost a two in there, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Then suddenly it looks like a position of the pitch which doesn't have that much depth. And if you're only going to play kind of one striker, you've got three or four players in that position who can fill in there. So I think, yes, you'd have to say that Rangers will be active in the January transfer window. But I think the important thing, Derek, is it shouldn't be about continually moulding squads to certain managers. I think you should be tweaking them here or there. But the ideal, I think, is when you get a player someone like Cantwell, and he's maybe at the extreme end of the scale, he's going to be able to play under an array of different managers and an array of different positions. And he's a good move for the club anyway, because he's got resale value. He's got a potential market. He signed a good contract. That's a little bit different to some of the signings this summer, which have been signed more specifically for maybe a set style or a set manager. And although it might be claimed that they're still club signings, I think you could, as we discussed repeatedly, see how heavily influential Michael Beale was in the recruitment this summer. So looking to January, if you look back to what happened even under Gio in January of 2022, when you had players come in to try and, I guess, mould the squad slightly more to his image, with a right winger, with an attacking midfielder, with a defensive midfielder who could play at the back as well. There might be a little bit of that. I just think the sporting director appointment when it comes to this conversation is so important, because we know, even though I think Clement early on that he signed a long contract, the signs look good, I think most people would say confidently that he's the right person for the position at the moment. Managerial lifespans are short though, and the squad goes beyond that. And what we've seen over the course of 3 now successive autumns really is a squad adapting to a new manager with loads of injuries. If you do the same thing, you're going to garner the same results. I think even if you have a better manager or a manager with a more experience shaping recruitment, you've still got a manager shaping recruitment. So that's why I think the sporting director is so important, not only for the summer, but for January as well.
Yes, right. Some interesting comments coming in. Nice of Gary to offer this. He says, if I win the Euro Millions, I will give half of it to the gaffer for new players. That's very kind of you, Gary. Fingers crossed you win the jackpot this evening. This point here from Ian Thompson, just on John Lundstram, which is an interesting one, Joshua. He says, has anyone seen a lift in John Lundstram's performances since Clement came in? I certainly have. I think he's been pretty good in the last wee while. If he's been steady, shall we say? I think
you're not saying that with loads of confidence. I've
not had any complaints with him. I've got to be honest. I think he's been decent. He starts tonight for me as well. Long may it continue. I have seen a bit of a difference in him. I think all the players just look better. They look that they've got a bit more confidence. Ben Davies touched on that yesterday in his pre-match press conference. He says the managers came in individually and collectively. He's just given him and the players a bit of a boost, bringing them to the side in training and what have you, and just having a quiet word in their ear. And I think that's good. That's man management for me, and that's good. John Lundstram, for you, Josh, you've been pretty satisfied with his performances recently.
I thought the Hibs game he was good, and away at Prague as well. I think those games suit him when they're a bit more open. I thought the second half, Rangers found a way to win that game, and still on the basis of numbers, they created enough chances in the first half to win it, I think, or to certainly get level. Not only the penalty, but the chances that fall to Dessers and Lammers. I think Danilo probably finishes them, and it's a different game. With that said, I still think it's the second half that throws up a lot of issues. Rangers still... It's still a similar looking second half where you have crosses from deep, you have fullbacks wide, you have a similar makeup of the squad as we've seen in recent years, where it's not a full strength because of injuries. You have John Lundstram at the very middle of that. I don't think John Lundstram's strength as a footballer is that type of second half. I don't think he shies away from it. I think he continually takes the ball, but I don't think it suits him. He had 6 shots in that game, which is as many as he'd had in the domestic season as a whole beforehand. He had more passes than anyone else. I think if you're looking at in that situation, you want to get a creative profile on the ball. And that's why with Rangers, since Stephen Davis hasn't been in the squad, they've not had that profile at the base of midfield. If you look up the week before to that Hibs game, I don't think it's as much of an issue. There's more space for Rangers to play into. There's a piece on the website looking at the different ways that they build play and not always going through the middle of the pitch. If you take that to second half of the weekend, I think that is an issue because they lack natural width. I think that the squad is still going all the way back to the spine of the squad being built in 2018. Obviously, the top end has been refreshed, but the back end is not, and it means that it's similar, whereby you've still got the fullbacks providing width, and you've still got the fullbacks crossing, and I think that's still more comfortable for opponents to defend. Now, someone might say in the comments, well, what about Tavernier's cross for Danilo? And I totally agree, but I think most people would also agree that was a bit of an exception in that second half. It was a moment where Rangers attacked quickly, and it was a moment of real quality. I don't think you can rely on that. I think you need more reliable patterns in the final third. I think you need better use of the wide areas. I think you need more ball carriers in the team as well. And that's why I think you saw Nico Raskin increasingly moving wide, because in that squad he's someone who's going to be able to do that and go by players. I think there's a real lack of that at the moment. So it was a second half where I think you saw the character to stay in the game and to come back and win it. It's the second half where I think, going all the way back, Derek, to that 1-0 defeat against Hamilton in Gerrard's second season, to the Malmo game, to the Old Firm under Gio last season, to the Livingston game, to the Old Firm this season, to the Aberdeen game. Rangers have not made a habit of coming back and winning these games late. They won that away game at Aberdeen late last season, but aside from that, they've not had that reference point. And I think that could be big, because even Tavernier's cross for that second goal, that is space and pace you maybe don't play at if you don't get the equaliser moments before. They'll have that belief now. I still think Clement will look at that performance. I think there's so much to be worked on when you are trying to break down a defence, because for too much of that second half, I think it became more comfortable for Hearts than it had been in the first half when Rangers played at a bit of a better tempo. So Lundstrom, I don't think that's the ideal situation you want him in. And if you could pick any game for him, a Hibs game or a Sparta Prague, I think is better. Even tonight, I think will suit him better. But he is one of these players who is routinely fit, is routinely there. I don't think he hides. And I think that's and he again unlucky with a couple of shots at the weekend. From the edge of the box, as mentioned, he had 6. I just think that if you're looking at a profile that Rangers needs, he gives you some things in certain types of games. For that type of game, when it's about someone creating and picking a lock from the base of midfield, I think that's an area that Rangers need to look at moving forward.
Yeah, interesting points there. Let's hope that they're at it right from the off here tonight, Rangers, because Dundee will look to make it stuffy and difficult for Philip Clement's side. We'll finish up. Colin Cameron with a point here. He says, morning, lads. Can we maintain a winning streak to the year end? If we do, it means a League Cup, Europe in New Year, and we beat them away. Imagine, can we do it? There's some tricky fixtures coming up in that period of games. The old cliche, you only take one game at a time, but there's trips to Easter Road for Park Tynecastle in there before Rangers go to Parkhead on the 30th of December. So it is a big ask. I think Europe takes care of itself, Joshua. I think Rangers are going to take maximum points from the next 2 games at Ibrox, so that makes it the Betis game a bit of a formality, even though you want to finish first to avoid that playoff game. But the League Cup is also a huge game on Sunday. Is that a fair point for the comment that came in there from Collins? I think Rangers can go on a prolonged, sustained winning run here until the Celtic game?
Well, I was listening to Stevie yesterday, and
he doesn't think so.
His mood's not improved. He didn't think so. But underneath that, I think there was a serious point of there needs to be a sustained period of form for a sustained period of form, I guess, to be believable. Rangers have got difficult games coming up. They've got to go away to Pittodrie, Tynecastle, Easter Road, Celtic Park. Arguably, that might suit them better than Ibrox this season on the basis, compared to last season, on the basis of their results so far. I think the weekend was so important, Derek, because can you imagine the conversation we'd be having tonight if Rangers had lost that? You'd be looking at the prospect of, can they fall further behind, and then what happens in the League Cup, and then the season really does danger. Is it danger of kind of, I guess, petering out? Yeah, and that's what Clement needed at the start. He needed those results and continues to need. He's still in that early phase. Needs those results to buy the time to improve the performance. And with the 3 more games until the international break, that gives you a bit of time to refresh the squad, to put some more ideas across with January not too far away. I agree with Stevie, though, the sentiment. You need to see more. Tonight, I think, is a big game. How Rangers go and approach that away from home. You need to see more to be confident of that type of record coming to pass. With that said, what the squad have done over the past 2 managers is go on a good win and run towards the start of their managerial reigns. And if you do win tonight, if you win at the weekend and takes you to a final, you've then got a European home game. You suddenly think, well, maybe you can build a bit of momentum and win repeated games at the start of Clement's era. So the opportunity is there to be taken, and I guess that's if you play for a club like Rangers, that's what all you can ask for. And tonight I think will tell us a lot about how they'll perform away from home with admittedly limited squads, but how they'll perform away from home, because a lot of difficult away games coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll finish up. Chris asking, is a game on Rangers TV tonight? It is if you are abroad, Chris, and it's also available on Dundee TV, $14.99, I believe it is. If you want to watch the stream tonight, you can take out that package. I think just head over to the Dundee website and buy it there, or watch it on Rangers TV if you are abroad. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Huge thanks to Joshua as ever, and to everyone interacting with the show. It's greatly appreciated. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't already done so, we've got 2 brilliant offers on the website just now. You can take advantage of all the content on there for an entire year for just £18, or you can take advantage of the £4 for 4-month offer. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Chris is at Dens Park for us this evening, so I'll be back on later on. We'll check in with Chris when the teams drop at Dens Park, and also on full time as well. We'll hopefully talking about another Rangers victory. But until then, enjoy your Wednesday, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.